Now it's curious to note that a lot of elite secret societies for some reason worship Athena. At first the Illuminati had 3 degrees, 2 of which was named after Minerva, aka Athena. Then we have the Bohemian Club that meets in the Bohemian Grove, where they, worship an owl figure, the owl being the sacred animal of Athena. And in the Netherlands, the oldest, most traditional, most elite student secret society is called Elitist View Minerva. They have her on the banner, they have her on their logo. So why would they have Athena as the central archetype that they worship? Well, here it's worth pointing out that Athena was originally a serpent goddess, it seems like, that predates the arrival of Zeus and the Indo-Europeans in Greece by who knows how long. More than likely a goddess of earthly wisdom, by the more dark, feminine, mysterious mysteries of the universe, right? She has a lot of parallels to Minoan serpent goddesses. So is that the reason why Ares and the Bavarian Illuminati and the Bohemian Club and others are worshipping Athena? And notice that the carpet is red here, like the Ares ritual chamber where the aspirants become initiated and where the presidents become initiated as well. It doesn't take too much of guesswork to know what is going to happen to this young woman. And here we're seeing all the inner court members surrounding her, each of whom had to kill someone close to them.
Baal is bereid uw zonde op zich te nemen. Offer Baal uw ziel.
You can't sacrifice your soul. What you can do is that you can sever your connection to your soul. Our heart is sort of our phone line to that soul. Killing something that is dear to it, we essentially lose that phone connection to that higher wisdom. The idea is to turn them into pseudo-psychopaths, acquired sociopaths, so that they're capable of doing anything. Because if they, like Socrates, are very much tapped into the wisdom of their daemon, telling them what to do and what not to do, well, that is very impedamental to furthering their agenda. I don't know if you know this, but the showrunner of Ares, his girlfriend actually was part of one of these student societies. So, yeah. So the experience of Rosa in the show is actually directly modeled on the experiences that the showrunner's girlfriend had as part of one of these societies. So that's the being that she also saw at the museum in the first episode. And this is the morning after the party, and no, they are not all gloomy and down because of their hangovers, but because one of their friends died. That was Joost, the president of the student members of the secret society. Now Joost, the guy who has died, seemingly offed himself. He was found in the bathroom by Rosa. We talked about that in the previous episode. If you want to find out how that kind of went down, then check that out. And here we have Borms. He's the next in line, and now he's going to be taken to the ritual chamber. He doesn't know it yet, but he has to undergo a specific ritual to become not just president, but inner court member. Because many secret societies, they have a secret society within the secret society.
Meneer Borms.
And you don't know what it is until you're there. There's no prep time, no nothing. You are in the ritual chamber. Go. And this is the Svanenburg mansion where Carmen Svanenburg grew up. And her father, Maurits Svanenburg, is the head of Ares. So he has a lot of children. They're basically like the princes and princesses of Ares. And what we're seeing here outside the room here are 2 busts that I believe represent, of course, ancestors, so to say, right? Men in the family tree of the Svanenburgs. And I believe that the Svanenburg represent the regent families, the merchant elite that used to run the Netherlands. Because back in the day, the Netherlands didn't have a royal family. They were in a kingdom, but they very much had an aristocracy, not in a sort of baron and duke type of way, the average type of aristocracy that we are used to seeing in England and France, but it's a merchant aristocracy, a political aristocracy, because they did inherit, of course, their family businesses, but also political office as well. So these regent families basically ran the Netherlands, and the Svanenburgs represent these families. And what they did following the French Revolution, where democratic values, egalitarian values were spreading, was that they decided to go underground and to become more subtle and low-key in their sort of financial, political aristocracy ways. So they decided to found ultra-exclusive, highly elite student organization environment that is collectively called a corpora. And this environment, this esoteric elite environment, is still alive and well today in the Netherlands, as evident by the fact that the majority of the judges, politicians, CEOs are members of one of these student organizations, right? By the way, the showrunner, and Hatar, I don't know if you know this, but the showrunner of Ares, his girlfriend actually was part of one of these student societies.
I didn't know that, in fact.
You know, yeah. So the experience of Rosa in the show is actually directly modeled on the experiences that the showrunner's girlfriend had as part of one of these societies.
Hoe gaat het?
And right here we have Carmen's brother, Henry, and we actually see this guy in the prologue of the show. He is the son of the head of Ares, so he's sort of like this princely figure, if you will. And in this scene, or in fact for the rest of the show, he's going to be a very gloomy presence. He's just kind of going to stand in the background and kind of just do nothing, just kind of look quite gloomy and not very comfortable. And you might write that off as him being socially awkward, but in the prologue, he's shown as being very sort of expansive and very confident and suave and smiling and all that stuff. But what happens in the prologue is that his girlfriend, who he's by the way cheating on quite openly, he's a real douchebag, as you would expect in an environment like this, right? In an environment that is essentially the sort of sense of power of the Netherlands, right? But what happens is that his girlfriend offs herself. And also, he is a former president and a current inner court member.
Mag ik eerst de kring vragen te gaan staan?
So that means that he has undergone the very ritual that Joost went through and that Arnold Borms is going to go through. And that is to kill someone dear to him. That is the ritual that they have to undergo to become president and inner court member. But what we're seeing here is that he seems to be struggling with what he did, right? He's again not this flamboyant, smiling presence, but it seems like he has an internal struggle, and that is something that is super, super key for the show and how it's going to progress. For now, I just want to point out the color of his sweater, because in the prologue, he's dressed more in dark colors, dark blues, but here we have him in the color of the sun, right, in yellow. And he's standing by the window, being bathed in sunlight. And furthermore, he's standing right next to a bust of Apollo, the Greco-Roman sun god. In the prologue, I point out how the young woman, as she enters Ares, right into this elite underworld of Amsterdam, that she goes from being bathed in sunlight and warm sunlight into sort of entering the shadows and the more pale artificial light of the order, right? So it's this sort of transition away from the sun and into darkness, right? And in esoteric science and philosophy, whether we look at astrology, alchemy, the sun represents the soul. You probably know this, or you probably use the sun as a metaphor yourself for the soul, right? This sense of our being, this center from which our life and consciousness flows. So I find it very, very significant that we have this son of the head of Ares, president or former president, current inner court member, who has killed someone that he loves to become a member, right? All in order to sever his connection from his soul. However, what we're seeing here is that he doesn't, and you'll see that in the rest of the show. Just notice him in the background. He doesn't say anything. He's just kind of standing there. But far from just being a bit of a wallpaper for the show, his silence speaks volumes, because he's dressed in the color of the sun. He stands bathed in sun next to a bust of the sun god himself. To me, what this shows is that he's actually moving away from the darkness of the order within himself. But he's still in the mansion, still in the lion's den, if you will, and he still sort of benefits from his position, right, and from what he's done. But to me, he is struggling. He is feeling his guilt. He's feeling shame. He's feeling sadness, right? So he's in contact with his soul, as evoked by him standing by the window in the sun-clad sweater here next to Apollo. And Apollo, sun god, there's other sun gods as well that may represent the soul. It could even be Jesus, right? The light of the world, right? In ancient times in Egypt, it would have been Horus. In Persia, it would have been Mithra or Mithras. But at the end of the day, it's an archetype for the soul. And if you go even further back or into different parts of the world, the sun god becomes a goddess. So, but the sun and the soul at the end of the day is bisexual, right? It doesn't have a gender. It's masculine in the sense that it is pouring forth, it's sharing, it's shining. But who knows, maybe that is a sort of more patriarchal view on spirituality that we've been sort of, that we have been fed with for the last several hundred years, to the point where we think that is what the masculine is. Maybe it is. Anyway, let's continue here, but just pay attention to this guy, Henry, standing in the background, all gloomy. It speaks volumes to what this show is about. And by the way, speaking of busts, we have the Apollo bust on the left, right, where Henry is standing. But then on the right, we have a bust of Artemis, the lunar goddess sister of Apollo. Now, Henry, I believe, represents Apollo, right? He has, he's clean shaven. He has like this long, wavy hair. He has like this quite characteristic Greek nose. He's dressed in the color of the sun. So if he represents Apollo, I actually believe that Carmen represents Artemis. And there is, I would even say there's proof of this, or strong indication of this in the show, later in the show. Because Artemis is a goddess of course, forest and wilderness, the moon. She's also a goddess of childbirth and the protection of children, right? So she's a protector of children. Remember that, because Carmen may or may not be put in a situation where she has to make up her mind whether or not she wants to protect the child or not. So keep that in mind and let's continue.
Hoe gaat het? Papa komt.
And if Henry represents Apollo and Carmen represents Artemis, then it stands to reason that their father Maurits represents Zeus. And there's some very compelling parallels between Maurits and Zeus that we will get into, I believe, in episode 7 actually. And by the way, Joost, who offed himself in the last episode, was the partner of Carmen.
Zwalenburg, vader van Carmen.
Rosa.
Jongens. Goed, welkom.
And notice behind Maurits we have two decorations embellished with the visage of Athena, aka Minerva. Now it's curious to note that a lot of elite secret societies for some reason worship Athena. At first the Illuminati had 3 degrees, 2 of which was named after Minerva, aka Athena. Then we have the Bohemian Club that meets in the Bohemian Grove, where they, worship an owl figure, the owl being the sacred animal of Athena. And in the Netherlands, the oldest, most traditional, most elite and entrenched student secret society is called Elitist View Minerva. So they're named after her. They have her on the banner, they have her on their logo. It's a curious thing because these people and these members are mostly men, and they're mostly the people that benefit from the patriarchal paradigm that is our hierarchical, capitalistic structure. So these men are not exactly very in tune with the divine feminine. So why would they have Athena as the central archetype that they worship? Well, here it's worth pointing out that Athena was originally a serpent goddess, it seems like, that predates the arrival of Zeus and the Indo-Europeans in Greece by who knows how long. She was a goddess that existed there way before they arrived, more than likely a goddess of earthy wisdom, by the more dark, feminine, mysterious mysteries of the universe, right? She has a lot of parallels to Minoan serpent goddesses. But then the Indo-Europeans arrived, they arrived with their sky gods, their thunder god, and they subvert and they shift and change the mythological landscape to fit their worldview. But they arrived there and they saw how popular and widespread the cult of Athena was. So they couldn't just do away with it. So they had to sort of subsume her into their pantheon and to change her enough, but not too much, so that the people that worshipped her would sort of revolt, if you will, but enough so that she wouldn't conflict with their sky god religion. So what they did was they had Zeus, in a way, give birth to her through his set. To get really specific, he ate Metis, the wisdom goddess of the Titans, because it was prophesied that she would give birth to a god that would dispose him. Right, that was his equal, even superior, and that would dispose him. But then she stays inside of him and actually moves into his mind to guide and direct him and provide him counsel so that he can become a wise ruler. And remember that, by the way, this whole Zeus swallowing Metis, the wisdom titaness, who becomes this wise counselor in his mind, because we're going to see something very strikingly similar with Maurits here, the Zeus of Ares. So Metis gives birth to Athena inside Zeus, clads her in armor. He gets a headache because he's fashioning all the armor here for Athena. So Hephaestion cracks open his head and out emerges Athena, decked in armor. So Athena is essentially, in the Indo-European patriarchal sky god religion view, a product of the mind, or the masculine mind of Zeus. You know, so she's kind of like daddy's good girl who is basically just acting in alignment with him. She's an extension of him, right? A sort of mental projection, if you will, of his own mind. I think all men have within them a goddess worshipper. I think that is the ideal state of a man, is to have a good relationship to the feminine, both in the form of women, but also in the form of the goddess and also your own intrapsychic universe, right? To have a good connection to it. And I think that all men have that within them, and that they want to be reverential towards the feminine. But in our modern day, still patriarchic society, by the way, patriarchy is not necessarily a society where only men rule, but it's a type of rulership that is masculine. So I even think that you could have a patriarchy run exclusively by women, in as much as the women function in a masculine capacity. So even though there's a lot of women in the job markets and that are, I would even say, dominating the university system, and eventually I think it actually is going to tilt, and that more women are going to be in prominent position than men, but we'll see about that. But anyway, patriarchy is not just about gender. It's about a specific type of consciousness and a specific type of social structure, right? So these men, they sort of benefit from and control the patriarchal system that we live in, a system that is sort of like a financial sky god religion in a way, actually. And it's about, again, conquest, not through traditional war means, but through financial means. We very much still live in the same world. So is that the reason why Ares and the Bavarian Illuminati and the Bohemian Club and others are worshipping Athena? Is it a safe way for them to adore the feminine, but packaged in patriarchic armor, if you will? Let us know down below, and let's have a conversation about that.
Wat is er gebeurd?
So Maurits very much wants to figure out what is going on here, right? There's an issue here at Ares where quite a few young members are offering themselves.
Dus even praktisch, hoe gaan we dit aanpakken? We houden het binnen deze kamer. Roderick, heb je ideeën?
So he wants to figure out what is happening, what is going on. At the same time, he also wants to test these young people. So this is very much also a form of initiation ritual for Rosa, for Roderick, and for Jacob, to see what do you guys do when the hits the fan. Are you going to just cower and be afraid and have your mind sort of frozen in fear? Or are you innovative? Can you think? Can you make decisions that might not be the most moral, but that are effective in executing our will, right? In getting our way and in sort of landing outcomes that are to our benefit, or at least that is not to our detriment.
Ongeluk. Brak zijn nek.
Maurits, he's the head of Aries. He was initiated as a president when he was a teenager. He doesn't need their input, but he wants to test them to see if they can think on their feet, if they can, think outside a normal state of consciousness that is sort of like aligned with ethics and morals, right? What they do in Aries is that they, quote unquote, liberate their members from morality and ethics, and also from our innate sort of feeling of what is good and what is not, right? What the Egyptians call mat, right? Justice, balance, harmony.
We hebben hem levend zien vertrekken. Wij moeten liegen.
And here we have Rosa proving herself to these high-ups of the order, showing that, yeah, we just lie. We just come up with a story. We make reality what we want it to be. And notice that the carpet is red here, like the Aries ritual chamber, where the aspirants become initiated and where the presidents become initiated as well. And at this point, I believe that Arnold Borms is in the ritual chamber right now, going through what he has to go through to become president, which is to kill someone he holds dear. And here we have Roderick, we have Arnold Borms, we have Jacob and Rosa, and the body of Joost, the former president. And I guess you can probably guess what they have to do to make it look like an accident.
Wil je geen mensen voor?
And Roderick is like, don't we have people for this? And of course they do, right? But just as they didn't need their input on what to do, neither do they need them to maul the body of their former friend. But they're doing this to test them, right? So you can see this as also being a form of impromptu initiation ritual, if you will. Because they want members who have no moral, ethical, or spiritual grievance in doing what needs to be done, doing what benefits Aries, or at the very least what is not to the detriment of Aries. Yeah, they are a society within society, right? They're functioning according to the state within state model of the VOC. So they don't recognize any laws or rules or ethics outside the lodge house.
Rosa, dank je voor de net.
And I very much see Maurits and Hester de Hoogja as like her new sort of parent figures within this new world. Right? The whole idea is that you leave behind your family in as much as they're not part of Aries, and that you get and that Aries becomes your new family. And that is the case for Rosa, right?
Rosa, kom.
Wat wil je? Naar huis.
She doesn't live with the family anymore. She lives in the Aries lodge house. Oh, and by the way, notice here, Henry standing in the background, looking, watching Rosa, right? His silence right here speaks volumes. His presence in the background takes up a lot of space, at least in my mind, because he's watching Rosa go down the very descent that he went down. And he's one of the members that have gone down the darkest path. And I believe that he has not separated himself from that yet. I believe that he's actually still in tune with his shame and guilt. So the next time I'm going to mention him will probably be in the last episode, and I just want you to remember him for now. Again, he is not going to say anything, he's not going to do anything, he's just going to stay in the background. But I think that his presence is thematically very, very potent. And we have another piece of decoration of Athena. And here we have two lions in the curtains. What might that represent? Do you have any idea, Hatar? The two lions? Huh?
Dragons.
Are they dragons? For you guys who haven't watched the rest of the commentary, he touched a wall and his fingers were burned. And the wall was separating him and the rest of the Aries Lodge house from something hiding, being kept hidden in the very basement of the order.
Hey, Esther wil me niet meer als haar assistent.
And here we have Borms, who is crying about having lost her internship that she didn't deserve in the first place. And Rosa actually got it instead. And Rosa does deserve it more, to be honest. But obviously it sucks.
Ze zei dat jij mijn plek nu hebt.
I mean, Aries is named after Mars, right? The god of war. And Mars is like the individual with a small I, right? It's like me and my success and my achievements and all that stuff, right? So even within the order, despite sort of preaching and sort of facilitating extreme loyalty, there's still a lot of competition between the members, right? Because at the end of the day, they serve themselves, right? It's all about me, and what can I get, what can I achieve, etc. So it's like this weird thing where they are wearing the same clothes and they're sleeping in rooms next to each other in the same house and they eat together and they have the same brand and they've been through the same rituals, yada, 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 and yet they are competing with one another as well. So just a very toxic environment, right? It's not really, I don't need to say it's not the most healthy place to be.
De beste wind.
And she's just like fully in it too, Rosa. She's like, the best ones. Look at her, she just squares off. Just fronts her. And I love stories like these, right? For the most part, when we follow main characters, they're always like neutrally good people, you know? But I think this is a way to really confront a reality, to really delve into a thematically very potent territory by having a character descend into evil. And in episode 3, we see her puking up some sort of black goo. So might we get some more of that here? Don't worry guys, I won't show too much of it. Just a little bit, just a little bit.
Wat gebeurt er met me? Doe maar. Houd niet tegen.
If you haven't watched the series yet and are watching it through this commentary show, or maybe you just found this video, are we seeing a pattern here? She pukes after what? After basically getting the internship over the other girl and squaring off on her and being like, you know, the best wins and all that stuff. So she's puking out a bunch of black goo of Bile. Sounds kind of similar to Baal, the demon at the basement of the lodge house.
Wat is dit?
I think Baal is a mix between Baal, the Near Eastern Canaanite god that has been very demonized through the biblical worldview, and then Bile that we're seeing here.
Nee. Hoe voel je je? Prima.
And remember in episode 2 where we had Moritz tell Joost over the phone that as long as they feed Baal, they can keep Baal at bay. This very much identifies Baal as being an egregore being a thought form that is created by, sustained by the mental energy of a group of people. This energy can be anything. It can be, it could be love, it can be hate, it could be anger, it could be fear, it could be shame and guilt and sadness. Maybe, you know. So we're gonna learn more about Baal, but for now, that is something to contemplate.
Ik ben trots op je, man. Ik geef toe dat ik fout zat.
They've had a bit of a clash. He's very much like a very traditional member of Aries, you know, multi-generation membership, very arrogant, very much sort of like, you know, we're the best, the rest of the Netherlands, the rest of the public are basically just serfs. And this is how a lot of them think. A lot of them, I mean, they are indoctrinated into thinking that they are better than everyone else and that everyone else in the country are basically just slaves, right? And they are the ruling class, they're the aristocrats. So that's why I call Aries and I call these student societies and this whole milieu shadow aristocracy, because it is the same families that have their sons and daughters attend these societies so that they can go out in society and basically rule it right through the judiciary system, the corporate sphere, the political sphere, right? So the Netherlands, I guess you can still say it has a democracy because it has the institutions. Then again, North Korea also has the institutions that qualifies for democracy. What a show like this really unveils is that we don't live in as democratic and egalitarian a society that we'd like to think.
Geef je nieuwe president een hand. No feet.
And here we are in the ceremonial chamber of Ares. So this is a flashback of what all Borms had to do earlier in the day. So we know that Joost had to kill someone to become president and inner court member. So I think it doesn't take too much of guesswork to know what is going to happen to this young woman. And I believe that they found her. I think they hurt her leg so that she can't run away. And here we're seeing all the inner court members surrounding her, each of whom had to kill someone close to them. There's no prep time. Arnold had no idea what he had to do. I don't know if he maybe had some suspicion of what it could be, but this is like an impromptu thing. What are you gonna do? And, you know, we can also guess about what would happen to him if he didn't go through with this ritual. That's also interesting to contemplate, because if he knows like what these guys do, or what they had to do to become the leaders of Ares, and thus the leaders of Amsterdam and the Netherlands, well, he probably wouldn't leave the ritual chamber either.
Baal is bereid uw zonde op zich te nemen. Arnold Borms. Offer Baal uw ziel.
Right, so the idea is to kill something that is close to your heart. And the heart is our connection to our soul. But you can't sacrifice your soul. What you can do is that you can sever your connection to your soul. The soul is everlasting, it's immortal, it's not a part of this realm that we live in here. But our heart is sort of our phone line to that soul. So by disconnecting from our heart, by killing something that is dear to it, we essentially lose that phone connection to that higher wisdom. And the reason why they want their members, the inner court members, to be disconnected from the soul is so that they are capable of doing anything. Because the soul is very much keeping us in check, right? By being in connection to your soul, you intuitively know what is a good thing to do, what is a bad thing to do. You know, but if you remove yourself from that, you will have no moral grievance at all. Firing 1,000 people in your company, for instance, or sort of having people in the Congo slave away for your company to make batteries, right? So for these people, being in connection to the soul is an impediment. The idea is to turn them into pseudo psychopaths, acquired sociopaths, so that they're capable of doing anything. And in this regard, they have to sacrifice their connection to the soul, because if they, like Socrates, are very much tapped into the wisdom of their daemon, telling them what to do and what not to do, well, that is very impedimental to furthering their agendas, which for the most part are not that altruistic, let's just say. Meanwhile, Henry just looking depressed as fuck. And I think that's a sign of health, actually. I think it's a sign of health to feel deeply sad, depressed in an inhuman context, like Ares, right? If you just walk around smiling, you know, being all cordial, and I mean, I would say that's a sign of ill health, psychologically. And how many people walking around in society, in a world that is pretty effed up, just feeling fine about it, right? Meanwhile, we have people with anxiety disorders or depression, and we think that these are the people that needs to be fixed. What if it's the society that needs to be fixed? So we can absolutely expand Ares to accommodate and represent the rest of society. Reality is fractal. So you can look at one small aspect of society, and that will be a metaphor, if you will, for the rest of society, right? And we need more people in the real world, like Jacob here, who is able to feel that something is off and is willing to do something about it, right? Far too many people ignore the intuition. I mean, I think most of us feel that something is wrong in the world, is wrong about society, and we're getting more and more empirical evidence that this is the case. But I think a lot of us, without that empirical evidence, feel it, right? Like Jacob feels it. But how many of us are willing to grab that hammer, right, and break down the wall